It's worth noting that the Canadian government hoped for and in a way received benefits from this war in the sense that Canada acquired greater autonomy for itself because of this war. It became a linchpin in the supplies and materials part of the war effort, and the sacrifices that the Canadian soldiers made in a way paid off in terms of benefits to Canada post-war. One could blame Gavril Princip, the somewhat hapless terrorist from a Serbian terrorist organization who, of course, crosses the border into Bosnia and shoots the heir to the Austrian throne, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife in the summer of 1914.
Tensions and rivalries had already been building within Europe since the turn of the 20th century, but the assassination was a tripwire that set off war with Britain, France, Russia, and Italy on one side, and Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Turkey on the other.
Austria-Hungary, who are determined to avenge the death of their heir, want to invade Serbia, but Serbia is protected by the Russians. In turn, Germany issues the infamous blank check to Austria-Hungary, saying, whatever you decide to do here, we will support you. This gets the other great powers in Europe very nervous, and on top of that, Russia has an alliance with France. When the Russians orders a partial mobilization of the Russian troops, the Germans see this as an act of provocation, and a flurry of declarations of war begin. Austria-Hungary declaring war on Serbia. You have France coming in, you have Germany coming in. The British have a nominal alliance with the Russians and the French, but they don't have a hard and fast reason to come in at this point. But the German invasion plans, because the Germans are facing a two-front war, it's a military plan known as the Schlieffen Plan, which will ideally allow Germany to conquer France in a few short weeks. The problem with this plan is it requires the invasion of Belgium, which is a neutral country whose neutrality has been guaranteed by Great Britain.
Don't ever laugh as a hearse goes by, or you may be the next to die.
It becomes publicized throughout the Western world, in Canada and in Great Britain, the depredations which had been committed by the German troops against Belgian civilians. That sort of enthusiasm is in part motivated by seeing this German army as committing terrible brutality against the civilian population, as well as invading a neutral country.
The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out, the worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose, they eat the jelly between your toes.
So when Britain declared war on the 1st of August 1914, it did so on behalf not simply of people living in Britain, but also people living throughout the British world. This included India, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, as well as the South African Veldt and the outports of Newfoundland, which was then a separate dominion.
The United States had a long tradition of not becoming involved in European affairs. President Woodrow Wilson had just been elected on a platform of neutrality. The United States was not ready militarily. The U.S. Army just had under 200,000 troops, and they were spread across the United States and really focused on Mexico and the Mexican Revolution there and defending U.S. business interests in Mexico. There was an active peace movement with leading Americans who were all opposed to the war. And finally, perhaps the most important reason that the United States was late to arrive to the war was that Americans were divided about which side to support. A number of Protestant Americans naturally supported England and France, but remember in 1914, 1917, a large percentage of Americans were of German American background, had relatives in the Austria-Hungary Empire, Italian Americans, so people who were Catholic, and Irish Americans were not too keen to enter the war on the side of England.
The war changed the relationship between citizens and their government and their state. Canada lost almost an entire generation of young men. 1 in every 10 Canadian men who served died. 1 in every 4 Newfoundlanders who served died. Canada had full autonomy and independence over its domestic affairs, but not over its foreign policy, and this would change as the war dragged on, and Britain needed more and more support from its various dominions. Either Canada would seek autonomy within the British Empire or equality within the British Empire, but in either case, this was now Canada's war.